What actually happens when the calendar flips from working life to retired life? Today, we're taking a look at something most people plan for, but rarely get to hear about honestly, the first year of retirement. Welcome back to Make It Personal, the show where we talk about real money and real life. Today, I'm joined by a longtime friend, Rick Funk. And some of you may say, who? Though if you're in the insurance and financial services space and you have anything to do with recruiting, you certainly know who Rick Funk is. He retired earlier this year after what I believe, Rick, you told me was 42 and a half or so years with one organization, LIMRA. If you don't know, LIMRA is an industry research and training organization that helps insurance and financial services companies understand the market and how to improve how we ultimately do business. But that gives you a little bit of background about Rick, but that's not why I've got him here today, or at least very little of why I've got him here today. Why I have him here is he retired about a year ago, and recently we got a chance to just catch up over the phone after 11, 12, 14 months, whatever it had been that we had talked. And it was just such a great conversation at the end of it. I thought to myself when I asked Rick, like, this to me would make such a great podcast, probably for myself as I think about ultimate retirement. Rick, I'm not quite there yet. But just love the story, and I think our listeners would benefit from the story. So Rick, welcome to the call, and thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Mark, for having me. I'm really excited to be with you today.
All right. And I'm excited as well. So let's jump in. And the good part for anybody that knows you, we're not talking about CP plus or any of that stuff, because from what you told me, you couldn't spell CP plus if I spotted you the C and the P at this point. So let's talk about other stuff. Let's talk about retirement. So you're there. You're almost 12 months in now. What was that moment that really hit you that you were retired?
Yeah, I think there were a couple moments, Mark. I think the very first one was that first Sunday night where I didn't have any calls that week. I didn't have to create a presentation that week. I didn't have to figure out what my schedule was for meetings. The last few years of my career at LIMRA, I was in charge of distribution for our international division. And most of our team was 12 to 14 hours ahead of me. So Sunday night was actually a work night for me because it was their Monday morning. So I think when I got to Sunday night and I'm like, oh wait, I don't have any calls tonight. I don't have any meetings. And it was just one of those things. Is this really true? I had to pinch myself. That was the very first time. Then there were other times throughout the year where it kind of hit me. I remember distinctly during the summer. It was a beautiful day. It was 75 degrees, crystal clear sky, no humidity. And my wife and I had no plans that day. And we woke up and we're having our coffee, and I said, you know what? This is a good day to ride down to the beach. The beach is like an hour and a half from our house. I said, let's go down the beach and have lunch down by the beach and just do that. And it was like a Wednesday. And I said, and as we were driving, I remember saying to her, gosh, we never would be able to do this in the past. And it's just that spontaneous thing of being able to do something, especially during the middle of the work week, where you couldn't do it before. So it hits you not just once, but several times throughout the year. It reminds you that you are retired.
This is the story that you told me that I connected so well with. And I know that the saying is, I believe it's once you retire, every day is a Saturday. Sounds like in your world it started with Sunday, so maybe every day is a Sunday, right, for you. But just an awesome story as to how and well and just the learning that it's not just that first day. It's that what you told me about, like not jumping on a plane. That old routine that you had to break was a pleasure to break. It sounds like
it was, and what's really hard to believe is. You know this, Mark. I served North America for most of my career. My customers were in North America, including Mutual of Omaha. But again, the last several years of my career, I was doing just international work. And I would only get on a plane 4 times a year, but it was 4 times to Asia. And they were 7 to 10 day trips. And I haven't flown this year. And it's just so weird not flying and I just haven't done it yet. So that is a definite difference between work life for me and retirement.
Awesome. Well, you talked about the long, extended trips to Asia you used to take, but let's talk a little bit like daily routine.
Yep.
I know you told me there's a new way that you've got to keep track of days of the week in retirement. Talk to me a little bit about how your daily routine changed and ultimately how it is that you know which day of the week it is.
Yeah, I think of my parents often because I remember when this happened to them. I do get the days of the week mixed up, especially like during the middle of the week, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. And really, the only way I can keep track is by my pill box, my medicine. So knowing what day it is that I've taken a certain pill. It's so funny, but you do days, because like you said, every day is a Saturday. Nothing sticks out that says, okay, this is the weekend. In fact, I'll just share a quick little story for you. Our daughter got married this year, and it was in the spring. It was the end of May. We had in Connecticut 14 Saturdays in a row where it rained. Now, during the middle of the week, it was pretty nice weather. But for some reason, 14 Saturdays in a row, of course, her wedding had to be one of the 14 Saturdays. And I just said, oh, I feel so bad for the people that work because I knew how much you look forward to the weekends. I remember that, it's like, oh, okay. But for us, it was like, hey, we were enjoying the great weather during the week, and it didn't matter that it was happening on Saturdays, of course, other than the wedding. But yeah, that's just another example.
That's awesome. Was the identity shift harder or easier than you expected, going from what you did and kind of what I knew you for to who you are now? How was that? How did that take place?
Yeah, I think, it was a little harder than I thought because my day when I was working was very structured. And again, especially the last few years, Mark, working international, I had calls at night. I had calls early in the morning. And then our support team was in Connecticut. So I would be answering emails during the day. And I remember when I first started in the position, I was working 16 to 18 hours a day. And I was like, I can't sustain this, right? So it was I had a very structured workday of when I would be on and when I'd be off. And people are going to laugh the last couple of years. And I knew I was getting old. I would take a nap in the middle of the day, like around noontime. I would take, because I was up so late at night and I was up first thing in the morning and I was trying to catch up on my sleep. So that was a little bit of the hard part, was adjusting to that, because you create your own structure now when you're retired. And I think it's one of the things I realized, it's really important to have something to look forward to. It is, I know I mentioned it to you when we talked previously. I had golf. I got involved in golf. And that kept me occupied in the spring, summer, and fall. In the wintertime, one of my best friends is a high school basketball coach. And I got a chance to go to all the games, which again, I never would be able to because at night I would have calls. So those were things that I kept looking forward to, which helped kind of with the structure. And we put a calendar up on the refrigerator, and a lot of it's doctor's appointments. But I would write in, okay, Johnny's games are these nights this week and stuff like that. So we knew exactly what the calendar was. I knew what the structure for my day was, and it gave us time to fill that in with however else we wanted to fill it in.
Yeah, that was one of the questions I had, is what helped you establish a new rhythm. And it sounds like you just described it between golf and basketball and going to get poked and prodded by different medical professionals. You've built a new rhythm. You've built a new structure.
There's a really good video out there. I know it's on Instagram where a guy says, he goes, I've taken up running, and it's a great way to meet new people. I met my cardiologist. I met my orthopedic. You learn, all of a sudden you have all these doctor's appointments. But it is true. And the other thing is in between the golf and the basketball and stuff, my wife and we try to do a really good job of walking. It's something we can do together. It's something that keeps us active. We both enjoy it. And that's important too. It's just stuff that we can do together. Yeah.
Is there anything that's caught you off guard financially during your first year of retirement? I know we talked about like the go-go, slow go, no-go.
Yeah.
I like to think that you're firmly in your go-go years right now.
Yeah.
But like financially, anything that caught you off guard this first year?
You know, it's funny because you go from making money and saving to now, you're working off your savings. I found myself looking at our financials a lot more closely this year than I ever did before. When I was working I would check out my 401k maybe once a week. I'd take a look to see how it's doing. In the morning when I get up, I look at our investment. We rolled the 401k over into an IRA. I look at that every morning just because I'm curious to see. So that caught me off guard a little bit, Mark. With that, I was a little bit, I don't want to say nervous because I knew we were able to retire, but it just I just wanted to make sure, okay, am I still going to be okay, right? So that caught me off a little bit, how much I was really focused on it.
Okay. I recently heard an analogy, and I forget where I heard it, Rick, but thinking of it like a battery, that during your working years, you're charging that battery up, you're charging that battery up, you're charging that battery up, trying to get it as to full power as you possibly can. And then you make that shift. And then all of a sudden, you're trying to draw that energy down, but you don't want to go too far, right?
That's right. Yeah. And honestly, Mark, that's where the role of an advisor really comes into play. We sat down with our advisor, and by the way, my wife retired about a year and a half before I did, okay? And she retired once our mortgage was paid off. And that was the deal, because she worked, and we said, okay, once the mortgage is paid off, you can go ahead and retire. She did. And then I wasn't really sure about when I was going to retire, and we'll get into that later, but it was like we sat down with the advisor and said, I think we're okay to retire. Let's figure out whether we are or not. And that's where we went. The advisor sat down and we went through kind of like a spreadsheet, and we talked about the streams of income that we would have, right? And then we would talk about what are your monthly expenses, and what are your yearly expenses and stuff like that. And that's where we really figured out, okay, I'm okay to retire. We can do this. And I think, the value of a good advisor, knowing and doing that, and also knowing, Mark, this was key, what do we want to do in retirement, right? I'm not buying a yacht. I'm not buying a boat, right? What we wanted to do was really maintain our lifestyle the way it was while I was working. And we also wanted to travel a little bit more as well because we had some freedom.
Okay. Anything, probably an easy question for me to ask, may not be an easy one to answer, but as you think back leading up to that first Sunday, from a financial standpoint, anything you wish you had prepared differently for?
I thought about this, and I don't think so. And Mark, I got to give my parents a lot of credit here. They grew up during the Depression. They instilled in me and my siblings this strong sense of savings. My first job I ever had was when I was 12 years old. I was a newspaper boy for the Hartford Courant, the longest running, continuous running newspaper in the United States. And at 12 years old, I was making $25 a week, which was a lot of money in 1972. All right. But before I took the job, my mom took me down to the Savings Bank of Manchester, the town I grew up in, and made me open an account. She said, you can have this job, but I'm going to tell you exactly how much money you're going to put into the savings account and how much you can keep. And out of the $25, she made me put $20 in the bank every week, and I got to keep $5.
Wow.
And I could spend that $5 on whatever I wanted, usually a root beer, soda, and some kind of chips or whatever. But and I will tell you, I only had the job for a couple of years, but that money in that savings account actually turned into some of my spending money when I was in college.
Wow.
And it all started. So they instilled, they grew up during the Depression, they instilled it. And as soon as I joined LIMRA in 1982. The first thing I did was I enrolled in the 401k. And I am not, I'll share something with you. It's a little embarrassing, but it's the way it was. When I started as a research associate, I made $13,500 a year. That was my starting salary. And it was living paycheck to paycheck. But I enrolled in the 401k. And I kept thinking, man, maybe I should take some of that money out, because that's such a long ways away. It would make it easier. I could do more things. But I stuck with it. And because of that, over 42 and a half years of putting money into the 401k, it turned out to be a good move.
That's awesome. That's awesome, Rick. And we'd have to do the math on it, but I could tell you my first full-time job, I forget the year, but $27,500 a year. So it wasn't much different than, again, we'd have to compare the inflation adjusted, right. But I don't know if there's anything embarrassing about making a living, and ultimately socking some of that money away. That is why we're having the conversation today. So congratulations to you on making a lot of choices. And I know you've got your own children. We've talked about them. You mentioned them. I imagine a lot of that same discipline's been passed on to that next generation. Yeah.
So we have two children, Sarah, who it's hard to believe next month will be 36. And our son, Sean, who will be 34 next May. By the way, our son, Sean, who has autism, one of the things, and this plays into the whole retirement thing, in 2021, we were able to get him into a group home. It's 5 minutes away from our house. And it was actually probably one of the most difficult decisions my wife and I had to make. We wanted to keep him in the house forever, but we knew that at some point we would not be able to take care of him. And we knew, moving him into a group home was very important. Why I bring that up is it plays into our retirement lifestyle, and it really gives us the freedom to do things that we never did. And while I traveled extensively throughout my career at LIMRA, my wife did not, because she was home taking care of our son, Sean. That is one of the things we'll want to do more of now that we have that freedom to do that. So
awesome. And that kind of leads me into the next topic, is like relationships, purpose. And you kind of just hit on some of this. How did your retirement affect your relationships with your spouse or your family? I know we talked about perspective changing and how, shifting what's important. Maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think this is a natural thing when you get older. I lost two very good friends. Both were in my wedding party. One was my best man, one was a groom. At a fair, a few years ago. They were my age. And it did change perspective on things. And one of them had retired early. He worked for the state of Connecticut, and he was able to take an early retirement. And he kept saying to me, he goes, Rick, when are you going to retire? We're going to do it. When are you going to retire? And then unfortunately, in March of 2020, he passed away from cancer. And we never got to do the things he wanted to do. And it did change the perspective on my life. And the thing that kept popping into my head, Mark, was you can always make more money, but you can't make more time. And when you get to be my age, I'm 65 now, time is gold. And, that goes back to what you said earlier about the 60s being the go years, the 70s being the slow years, and the 80s being your no years. But you realize health, right, and time, and as long as you have enough money, that's what's most important. And that really changed my perspective on things in terms of what's important in life. When I made the decision to retire, LIMRA asked me to continue to work both full-time and even on a consulting basis. And I made the decision not to, because I knew the way I am. If I said, okay, I'll consult, I'd be in there with both feet, and it wouldn't be any different.
An hour a day, right?
Yeah. So I just said, not, and it wasn't because of I had anything negative towards them. It was time. And it's hard to know, and that is a very personal decision of when is time.
Very cool. You've talked about sense of purpose, and I know maybe you've hit on some of that. But would you say you found your sense of purpose in retirement at this part? Are you still discovering it?
I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure. 2025 this year was so. Both for my wife and I, we're so occupied with our daughter's wedding. That took a lot of planning and resources and time, and we were so focused on that. As we go into as we're turning the corner and going into 2026, I'd like to do something else. I'd like to try to find some volunteer work. I'd like to do something else to give back. I haven't found it yet. I don't know what it is. And I think I'm certainly not saying, okay, this is retirement. This is the way it's going to be for the rest of my life. I think it's a journey, just like everything else. And that journey will take you down different avenues. And we just got to figure out, what is that? What do we want to do to help out, and what's the right amount, and that works for us, and it'll help benefit society.
Awesome, Rick. And I think about the other people I know who are retired. My parents are retired. Don't worry. It's not a shot at you. They've been retired for probably 20 years or close to it. My father-in-law's retired. And it seems like, at least for now, it seems like sometimes they're busier than when they worked. And so it sounds like you, between the wedding, and I know you mentioned me, 70 rounds of golf this year, which took years to do, other than leagues and stuff that you played in prior to retirement. Joining the golf club that you're a member of as a kid. Sounds like you're having fun figuring it out, which is the awesome part. You put yourself in that position to be able to do so.
Absolutely. And you know what, Mark, to touch a little bit on golf, you mentioned it. I grew up playing golf. My dad taught me golf. My dad was a great golfer. I'm nowhere near as good as my dad was. I joined the club in my hometown when I was a kid. They had a special student membership, which I joined when I was about 10 years old. And they let me keep it through college, which was unbelievable. But once I started working, I played very limited golf. Between getting married and having a family, just didn't have the time. And now I wanted to get back to it. And what I realize now, and this is one of the other things that's really important, Mark, is, yes, I love the game of golf and I love golfing. But there are days I'm going to play poorly, and there are days I'm going to play, better. But I'm with guys I enjoy being with. And the social connection is always a positive. And that, to me, especially in retirement, is so important, is having social connections. Because I think, where I hear people don't do well in retirement is not necessarily because they didn't save enough, although there's a lot of that. It's loneliness. It's not having those social connections. And so I really enjoy, part of the reason why I really enjoy golf is because of the social connections. And getting, some of these guys I've known since I've been in grade school, some of the guys are brand new, but it's being out there and just having a good time with the guys when I go out and play.
Awesome. Sounds like so much fun. I want to think about, I'm not there yet. I'm 51, Rick. I don't hope, we'll figure that out. Out. But if somebody's 6 months from retirement, what do you want them to know? I know when we talked, there were these two, to me, really profound questions that you shared with me that you answered for yourself. And when people ask you, maybe go into that a little bit and share with people that are on kind of that doorstep. How do you know when you're ready?
Yeah. And by the way, I think I've got a few friends that say they'll never retire because they love doing what they do. And I think that's great. I think it's a very personal decision. But if you're thinking about retirement, and I can't take credit for these two questions. They were actually given to me by a friend. Said, there's really two questions you have to answer positively to know when you're ready to retire. Number one is, have you had enough? And again, I don't want to put a negative spin on that. I don't want to say, oh, I was done with Limmer. No, not at all. It was just, I had reached a point in the career where I didn't want to climb the ladder any higher. I was happy where I was. And I just felt that it was time. There wasn't anything more I wanted to accomplish. It was just going to be more of the same. So that's number one. Have you had enough? The second one is, do you have enough? And again, that's where I had a feeling I had enough, but that's where I went to my advisor, and really we sat down and we worked out all the income, and if you think about it, in my case, Limera actually had a pension when I started. We froze it 20 years in, but I had revenue coming from a pension. I had revenue coming from my converted 401k into an IRA. I haven't taken Social Security yet. I will probably take it in the next year or so. Certainly no later than 67, but I haven't done that yet. I had bought a lifetime annuity, so I'm getting an annuity check every month. So I knew what my streams of income were, and then plus my wife's pension she was getting, and then what are your expenses, and then you figure it out, and you always want to have a buffer in there. So yeah, I think if you can answer those two questions positively, have you had enough, and do you have enough? That gives you a good indication.
That's great. And I've thought a lot about this question, not because I'm on the doorstep of retirement. Don't worry, I'm not announcing anything here today, but it's great to have that framework in your mind.
Yeah.
And that clarity. So thank you to your friend who passed that along to you, as those are a couple questions that will be forever impressed upon my mind as I think about this journey that Stacy and I are on to retirement ultimately. So, as we kind of wrap up, when you think about going into year 2 of retirement, what's got you most excited about year 2?
So year 2 is actually our 40th wedding anniversary, and we haven't started yet, but we are very much looking forward to taking a trip to Ireland. As that, my cousin's daughter's actually getting married in Ireland, so we thought we'd tie that in terms of a longer trip. So that's number one. Number 2 is my golf buddies. Every year for the last 40 years, we've been doing a golf trip. And next year, the golf trip is at Kiowa Island in South Carolina. For those of you who are golf nuts, that may ring a bell. That's where the Ryder Cup was in 1991. The PGA, more recently, it was actually Phil Mickelson's last major. He won in the PGA in Kiowa. So we got that going on. And then I think the other thing is just what I alluded to earlier, Mark, about maybe trying to find something else from a volunteering point of view and seeing what we can do. So I'm kind of excited about all 3 of those things, and getting out of my shoulder sling, because I had rotator cuff surgery. That's also important.
That's that bionic arm I was joking
That's right.
about before we came on today. Yeah, you'd be golfing better than ever once the bionic chip is in there. So what I love about the conversation, Rick, and what I love about our opportunity to catch up maybe 3-4 weeks ago, and I'll tell you, that was probably one of my favorite conversations of the year. And it was just a phone call. It wasn't video like this is. It was just hearing the voice of a longtime friend, and just knowing that you're doing well, knowing that you're benefiting from a lot of great choices, a lot of great discipline that you had in life to set yourself up and set your family up to be in the position that you're at. So wishing you nothing but the best. What is it? Long drives and straight putts.
That's
maybe
right.
Is my wish to you. Long drive, straight putts are probably a different way to say that. But I just appreciate you and appreciate you taking some time. I know there's a lot of people out there in our industry that are going to love to listen to this and just knowing what Rick Funk's up to 12 months into retirement. But beyond that, just general listeners, an opportunity to peer into the first year of retirement from somebody that's living it. So, Rick, I greatly appreciate you taking time to be with me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Mark. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, that's today's episode of Make It Personal. A huge thank you again to Rick Funk for giving us such an honest look at his first year of retirement. If you're approaching retirement yourself, or you want to talk through your plan, feel free to reach out. That's what we do. At Mutual of Omaha Advisors, we believe personal finance is personal. And if you're wondering where to start, this is exactly what we do. Your situation is unique, and so your plan should be too. It's never too early or too late to create a strategy that gives you the financial security that you deserve. So I encourage you to visit www.makeitpersonalpodcast.com. There you can connect with one of our advisors, download our ebook, other resources, subscribe to our newsletter. And if you like this episode or if it helped you out, please like and subscribe, leave a review, or share it with somebody else that you care about. Again, at Mutual of Omaha Advisors, we believe personal finance is personal and financial well-being is essential to your life's goals. Make it personal. It's your money. It's your plan. It's your future.
This podcast is for educational purposes only and may include references to concepts that have legal and/or tax implications. Mutual of Omaha Investor Services, Inc. does not provide tax or legal advice. Please consult with the appropriate professional regarding your personal situation prior to making any financial decisions. Strategies discussed may not be suitable for everyone. Securities and advisory services offered through Mutual of Omaha Investor Services, Inc., member FINRA SIPC. Mutual of Omaha Advisors is a division of Mutual of Omaha Insurance Company.